Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes gave us an absolutely incredible scene in Smackdown on September 20th, 2024. The kind of scene that we will remember for many years. It was worthy of cinema, and in this video, I suggest we take a closer look at it in detail because it truly deserves it.
I don't have anything to lose.
Make yourself comfortable, grab a coffee, and let's talk about it together.
You are on the Wrestling Paradise.
Analyzing the showdown between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns in Atlanta. Let's get started.
You're in my way in life.
It's important to know the context of this summit confrontation, I would say, between Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes. It's very important because it allows for an even greater awareness to fully grasp the magnitude and the epic and striking nature of this scene. Because for me, it's simple. I already find it legendary. I think it will go down in history. I think we will see it quite a few times, whether in pre-match clips, for example, between Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, of course. But really, it's the kind of scene you don't forget from Cito, in my opinion. And why is that? Because it is clearly a scene in a particular context. Roman Reigns returned not so long ago. He lost to Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania 40, the second match of what I want to say. And so, he lost the title he had held for a long time in his legendary reign that dated back to the summer of 2020, to summarize. And so, Cody Rhodes is not just anyone to Roman Reigns, that is obvious. Just as Roman Reigns is not just anyone to Cody Rhodes either. So, seeing them, both of them in this unprecedented context, because even in the build-up to their two matches at WrestleMania, it was always in the ring. To my great regret, I was the first to lament that there was not more creativity, staging, or creative efforts surrounding their rivalry. And by the way, I was quite sad that in the end, the build-up of their rivalry in 2024 was almost strictly the same as in 2023. And that was a shame because there were other things that could have been done. And when I see a scene like they had in Smackdown on September 20th, 2024, where they were both of them, in a stadium with, we will obviously come back to all of this, don't worry, great camera angles, epic music, really interesting dialogue with plenty of things to analyze. I think to myself, damn, you should have done this earlier. But well, it doesn't matter. The important thing is that they did it, and it was a special context. The two men are not just anyone in each other's journey. First of all, it's important to be fully aware of that. It's really significant. And then, especially, as I said, it was the first time they stepped out of the ring in their history. And I must admit that, personally, I love when a rivalry, when a storyline goes beyond the confines of the ring. I am always the first fan when a story is so interesting, psychological, and personal that we can really, essentially, go beyond the limits of wrestling. And the limits, I want to say, of the ropes of the ring, which are still very limited. Because aside from promos where we discuss face-to-face, or one person talks alone, or with physical confrontation, surprise attacks, or simply matches, a ring is still a bit creatively limited. So yes, you can also stage segments that are sometimes a bit special. I am particularly thinking of the time when there was the trial of Sami Zayn during the 30th anniversary of Monday Night Raw in early 2023. That was pushing the limits. And again, I find that even that day, it was ultimately just a desk, some chairs, the decor was very limited. So, in the story, we have seen that even in a ring, it is still possible to have special settings, sometimes even. Basically, within the framework of the WWE arena, you can still do a lot of things. But when we step out of the arena, which is too rare for my taste, I am an even bigger fan. For me, my absolute reference. Regulars know that I love Randy Orton, one of my favorite superstars. And of course, being a fan of Randy Orton means being an absolute fanatic. Passionate about the great era of 2009 when Randy Orton was at the top. Probably the best version of his career by far, and it was a very, very, very memorable segment. Well, among others in reality, because there were several, but one of the very memorable segments for Orton in 2009 is of course when Triple H came to attack him at his home. What was an out-of-line segment? And what does this kind of scene bring to a story? It immediately adds a dimension. Already, I find it enriches the story. It also refreshes it. especially if there has never really been any scene outside of it. So, even if someone could still tell me there was, back then, a few months ago, during the road to WrestleMania 40, the famous press conference. And I had been a fanatic. Once again, I said it. I had been a fanatic about having a press conference where a lot of things happened. By the way, in hindsight, I don't know what you think about it, but I find that press conference where you had The Rock's slap on Cody Rhodes, and thus The Rock's heel turn with Cody Rhodes, who ends up coming back at the end when you think we're going to see Roman against The Rock, but actually no, and instead a tag team match. Well, all of this unfolds in a very unpredictable and exciting way. For me, it was probably the best part, along with the famous attack by The Rock in the parking lot on Cody Rhodes. For me, those two moments, let's say, were the highlights of the road to WrestleMania 40. All this to say that when we step out of the ring, it opens up creative possibilities, enriches a story, and gives it an aspect where we move away from wrestling and are told a story like in a series or a movie. Because ultimately, by doing this, we resemble what is done on television, what is done on Netflix, what is done in cinema. It's true. In these universes, we are told stories. In everyday life settings or in special settings, it doesn't matter. Basically, it's not exclusively limited to a ring and a venue. And that's good. And indeed, it's much more interesting creatively. Anyway, you get the idea. And now you know the context in which this scene takes place. So, we must concretely recall what happened, what we were able to see, and it was magnificent. Hold on tight. It all started with aerial shots. From the city of Atlanta. It took place in Atlanta, which is not an insignificant city for either of them. We were reminded of this, and I like when WWE doesn't assume that we already know everything. Basically, that we're like chattering monkeys who know everyone's story by heart. Well, personally, in this case, we all already know a lot about Cody Rhodes. And then even about Roman Reigns, of course, but not everyone is supposed to know that Atlanta is not only Cody's hometown, and that it is a city that is fundamental even in the history of his family, but we are also not necessarily supposed to know that it is where Roman Reigns played American football before he got into wrestling. So it's a city that has meant a lot to both men, and the stadium where they were has particularly marked Roman Reigns' life. So it was a really, really, really symbolic place. And I like the fact that WWE reminded us of it. It's important, very important, I think. The setting was epic. And we saw both of them arriving by car at the stadium. And I mean, actually, inside the stadium. They didn't park in front, no, they came onto the lawn inside the venue, which I think is great. And so, you had a particularly interesting contrast. So, what is it? Simply put, Roman Reigns arriving in a convoy of black cars, while Cody Rhodes arrives alone in a white car. What a symbol, what a symbol. So, you can see several interpretations here. Because on one hand, you might think Roman arriving in a presidential convoy, it's him who's the most important. He's the star. He's the one arriving with enhanced security, who receives treatment worthy of an absolute VIP, while Cody Rhodes arrives all alone. So, we could still, for the more cynical among us, see this as an admission from WWE. Our real star is Roman, in reality. Cody, here's the thing. But let's not be cynical. Let's be a good audience and see that, in reality, this may symbolize a man who has relied heavily on others to help him, let's say, in his success, in his quest. Well, simply in his success. Roman Reigns, especially since 2020, and his legendary reign as the head of the tribe, also involves many enforcers. It's Jey Uso, it's Jimmy Uso, it's Solo Sikoa. It's also, in a way, Paul Heyman. Basically someone who helped him in one way or another, even if it's not necessarily physical. And it's true that it perhaps symbolizes a bit of this aspect. Roman Reigns is a man who doesn't really act alone. A man who somewhat needs, in a way, help. Whereas Cody Rhodes, I want to say, is a bit like the White Knight. Moreover, the color is also a symbol as he arrives in a white car while Roman arrives in black. What really creates even more a contrast between the way one is and the other, which is actually more or less the same, is that we could consider that Roman Reigns, since his return and his huge surge in popularity thanks to his comeback, as well as the work of Solo Sikoa and the new Bad Bloodline for months, has made us eagerly anticipate Roman. It is true that we could still say, despite this apparent face turn by Roman Reigns, at least between Roman and Cody, is somewhat like that. Moreover, it also relates to their hair color in a certain way. The white car goes well with Cody's hair color, and it's true that it's very symbolic, a convoy against a single car. White against black. I love it when WWE works on this kind of detail. Yet, these aren't extraordinary details either, but it's good. I really like it. And I also really appreciated something in particular about this segment, which is the music. The music, which was mainly a piece called The Storm by Vo Williams. So I want to say, well done, Vo. He gave us a piece, or at least WWE chose a piece that fit perfectly with the scene, an epic piece, with a bit of a rock side. But really, it's somewhat of a hybrid song, I would say, but it fit perfectly with the scene. It wasn't just that piece. At times there was some ambient music that somewhat matched the lyrics of each other, but for me, the music was really essential to the success of this scene. So, we're going to skip a bit of the beginning, where Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes were doing some pretty basic trash talking about one, considering Atlanta to be his city, because he played American football there, basically bleeding on the field. While the other was saying, basically, my family has been in Atlanta for generations. We have given our heart and soul. We have given our blood, our sweat, and our tears in this city. In short, that was a bit of basic trash talking. We were just setting the context. But above all, what was really interesting is that Roman said, or at least the idea that comes across is that Roman Reigns, he has nothing to lose. They took his necklace, the Ulafala, Paul Heyman, Jimmy Russo, while according to him, Cody has everything to lose. I will even quote more precisely the phrase that Roman Reigns said, "They took Jimmy from me, they took my wise men, they took my bloodline, and they took my Ulafala, the necklace. I have nothing to lose. For the first time in a long time, there is no weight on my neck. It's all on yours." And it's true that if we focus on this statement, we can see that it is indeed true that Roman Reigns is in an unprecedented situation, one we haven't seen before. And I would even say, have we ever seen it for Roman Reigns? At least not in the Tribal Chief version. Because in reality, the Tribal Chief has almost always been champion, so he has almost always had something to lose. I remind you that barely a week after his return at SummerSlam in 2020, he was already champion. And in the meantime, he constantly had something to lose. His title, mainly, in reality, and the longer his reign lasted, the more he had to lose, and the more it became something. So not a burden because he carried it with glory, let's say, but it was becoming something, a strong responsibility, let's say. And it's true that seeing Roman in this situation, where he says he has nothing to lose, is new, it's new, and it's interesting. It's interesting because we say, this is a Roman who has everything to conquer. This is a Roman who has everything to gain. Logically, this is a Roman who has the grit, the drive, and the intensity as well. Well, this is more about him as a performer in his acting than I found that during a large part of his reign, he had become much less intense than at the beginning. At the same time, let's say it had become more and more taken for granted for him. He was on a throne, I want to say. Everything was easy, and he was less and less, let's say, passionate, inhabited, whereas now he has everything to conquer. So I have good hope that we will see, and that we are already starting to see. Yes, I want to say yes, it's true, a Roman much more determined, much more intense. And there you go, basically, everything I read through this sentence, he has everything to go after. This is a Roman who must also prove himself again, who must take his revenge, who must reconquer. An unprecedented situation for Roman. And at that moment, Cody Rhodes still said another phrase saying, "We already have a tribal chief and it's not you. We already have a WWE champion and it's not you." So, at that moment, he still emphasized the fact that What he says is indeed true. It is relevant. Indeed, Roman Reigns absolutely must win. He absolutely must win, because if he is not able to reclaim not only his Olafala, which symbolizes, let's say, his title as chief of the tribe, if he cannot reclaim it, it is clear that his legitimacy and credibility are at a standstill if he fails. At least purely in the present. And just like the WWE title, that symbolized his success, his glory, and all his worth as a performer, as a wrestler, he no longer has it either. And if he doesn't manage to win it back either, that's why I think we'll have Roman against Cody 3. It's obvious soon. It's clear that Roman Reigns will be no one at that moment. At least in the story, he will be a man. As he himself said, a man, though he said it in a slightly different context, can still be considered a man without a country, at least a man without his titles, a man without what symbolizes his glory, and thus ultimately a normal man. In any case, he still has things to lose, and so two opposing visions are at play, as you will have understood. I will also note something I liked about this scene. You will notice that, at times, depending on what was said in the lines of one or the other, there were little black and white shots that matched the dialogue, along with piano notes. For example, when Cody said, "We already have a tribal chief and it's not you," we saw Solo Sikoa in a very stealthy manner. I thought that was great. Moreover, I would also point out that in terms of their appearances, in terms of their look, something that struck me, I don't know if it's the same for you, but it was Roman Reigns in a black t-shirt with a nice watch. I take this opportunity to point it out, a beautiful watch, while for a good part of his reign, it was a slightly more connected watch. So I have nothing against smartwatches, everyone has their own tastes. But still, having a really nice watch was definitely classier. But anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So, we had quite a contrast between Roman's casual look and Cody Rhodes in a suit. And that makes me want to ask you a question. Could it be that through his appearances and looks, we might ultimately see Roman Reigns as the man who dresses a bit more normally? Well, it's true that Roman Reigns, because of his charisma and his look, doesn't necessarily need to dress super classy to still have an aura and maintain elegance. On the contrary, perhaps, to a Cody Rhodes, Now, I don't want to speak ill, I like many things about Cody Rhodes, but it's true that Cody Rhodes doesn't have quite the same aura when he's in a suit compared to when he's in more casual attire. And it's true, that's basically all it brings, it's the added value of a costume. But seeing this, one might also ask the question, in this specific situation, does Cody Rhodes not seem like a heel in reality? It's true, the he in a suit, because traditionally it's always the he who wore a suit. This has been very rare in history. An example that comes to mind would be Batista, around 2005-2006, who sometimes came in a suit even though he was a babyface. But it's true that in history, the absolute example is of course Ric Flair. Now, that goes back a long way. But we know that Ric Flair at the time somewhat initiated this. The Ubi is much better than the Ubi in reality, but to understand the idea, it's about having a champion character who dresses elegantly and has a taste for luxury, flamboyance, let's say, and many wrestlers, and not just them. Even Conor McGregor in the UFC has copied it. It is clear and obvious that he has inspired many people. Basically, this side of him, I am number one, and I dress and behave like a star. And that's why one could wonder, upon seeing that scene, upon seeing their costumes, who was really the heel in that situation. I also want to mention that it was noticeable, especially in close-ups, how much Roman's face shows signs of aging. At the same time, it's normal. He is human too, but his face is definitely more marked than it was a few years ago. It's clear that these 4 years of reign are almost visible on his face. But on the other hand, it brings a slightly more masculine, more old-fashioned aspect, as if it were an ancient one, which also suits Roman well. I will especially highlight the final phrases of this scene, because we had these two opposing visions. Cody Rhodes was asking Roman to promise him that he could count on him when they wrestle together. This is a completely logical request from the American Nightmare. Roman promised to be loyal, but on the other hand, he said that when everything is settled, all this story implying that he will have dealt with the bloodline and thus suggesting that Solo Sikoa will no longer act like the chief of the tribe, will be down. At that moment, he will come to reclaim his property, namely his championship belt. However, Cody Rhodes said, basically, you're not going to learn it. Basically, it's not worth taking. And the last sentence, what a sentence that is. Hold on tight, listen, and savor this incredible phrase. Roman first tells Cody, "You're in my way." Because basically, Cody stepped in to prevent Roman from leaving, from exiting the stage. So that means, you're in my way. You're a bit of my obstacle. You're in my way. But then he says it again, you're in my way. Basically, you are in my way in life. You are in my way. What does that imply? What? An excellent line of dialogue. Because it implies that, Cody, you are basically the obstacle between me and my quest for revenge, for my reclamation. You are the obstacle, and I must conquer you. I must defeat you too. In my life, to move forward and reach the top again, I have to beat you. You are in my way. But one could also say, ultimately, is Cody Rhodes, by telling him you are in my way, not just a step in Roman Reigns' greater quest for something that goes beyond. Cody, is he not just a step? You can also see it this way. Either you're in my way, you're an obstacle, and you are the obstacle I must overcome. You are in my way. I have a path and I must go through you, but the path continues after that. And the question is, where does this path lead? And this is, let's say, the perfect moment to talk about the creative possibilities offered by this cinematic worthy scene. Moreover, before discussing that, I would like to emphasize that in addition to being a refreshing scene, it is too rare to have this kind of scene. I would like to highlight the stunning final drone shot where we start from Roman and Cody and rise above the stadium. I would also like to highlight the work on the beauty of the shots and the music. It was cinema. I can't praise it more than to say that it was cinema. And above all, the possibilities it offers, because it's true that when you see this scene, you think Roman and Cody will have to learn to collaborate. This will be complicated since they have a history as enemies. You think, well, they will have to collaborate, but then one wonders if, when this story about the bloodline unfolds, Roman and Cody against the bloodline, or will Roman end up alone against the bloodline, there will be a Roman versus Cody 3 at that moment. So we say to ourselves, this match is going to happen. It's obvious that it's going to happen. That's very exciting. The question is, when is it going to happen? Is it going to happen at Survivor Series? Personally, I would like that because I think it's a PLE that deserves a solo match. Finally, a one-on-one match. Worthy of the name and important even if it is often the War Games match, the main event in recent years. On the other hand, the downside of this is that it would reduce Roman's war, and thus Cody's, against Solo Sikoa's bloodline, to just a few weeks, whereas one could hope for, even if nothing would prevent them from doing it in weekly shows as well. A Roman against Jacob Fatu, a Roman against Solo Sikoa. The creative possibilities are abundant in Roman Reigns' war against the bad bloodline, or rather, the reconquest of Ulafala by Roman. There are possibilities galore. And I think it would be a shame if it only lasted until Survivor Series. So maybe this Roman Cody 3 will be set aside for, why not? Perhaps the Royal Rumble. Who knows? But amidst all this, another question arises. Certainly, there are possible tag team matches involving the members of the bad bloodline that include Roman and Cody. There is also Roman against Solo that is possible, Roman against Jacob Fatu that is possible, and Roman against Cody 3 in the medium term. However, in the long term, frankly, this is what I've been dreaming of for quite some time now. Roman against The Rock. It's the dream match. It's the two big stars. So the big question is, does this match need the title on the line? It's true that it's such a huge matchup. In the manner of The Rock against John Cena in 2012 at WrestleMania, there is not necessarily a need for a title. We could also put The Rock's People's Championship on the line. Why not? It's true. Just imagine. Can you even picture Roman Reigns winning the People's Champion title? The belt that The Rock had on the road to WrestleMania 40. Maybe. Who knows? In any case, it's true that the creative possibilities are enormous. Are you wondering where we are going to go? Is The Rock going to intervene in a Roman against Cody III? So, the big question is how it will happen. Cody Rhodes needs to face The Rock at some point. He mentioned that he would return to face him again on the Raw right after WrestleMania 40. So, questions arise. There are many questions. The Rock could intervene in a Roman against Cody III to sabotage both Cody and make him lose his title, and thus come back to ruin his life as he promised. But he could also go after Roman, thus setting up a match between Roman and The Rock, with no title on the line, but for the honor of being the head of the tribe. And perhaps we would learn that it was actually The Rock behind all, let's say, this insurrection from Solo Sikoa and his colleagues, and that the real final boss, it is safe to say that he is the final boss, and that it is he whom Roman must defeat to definitively validate his reclamation. You get it? The possibilities are numerous, and I have to say, what a story, damn it. What a story. This is a WWE that offers plenty of possible scenarios. On the other hand, the problem with all of this is that one must live up to it afterward. One must be worthy of everything that is promised as exciting. We have to live up to expectations afterwards, but hey, I say, let the good times roll. Let's enjoy the present moment. We had a great segment between Roman and Cody that will mark history, in my opinion, and sets up a lot of things. And we will see where it all leads.
We can say that this topic raises a lot of questions. I hope you had a good time watching this video, and I invite you to stay in the paradise of wrestling to look at some other ones. See you right away.
And that's the bottom line, 'cause Stone Cold said so. What?